This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus along the Tom Bigby River. And sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This episode is about a home in Columbus called Wisteria Place and the man on horseback. This summer between seventh and eighth grade, my mother fell seriously ill in our small town hospital. Uh, Recommended she seek treatment in San Antonio, Texas, which is about 12 hours away by car. Mother and Daddy left my older sister Elizabeth and I in the care of some dear childless friends who lived in a large antebellum home called Temple Heights. My sister was thrilled with this as she was working at a local department store walking distance from the butler's home. But perhaps best of all, her dear friend Gil Wallace lived next door in another antebellum home, Wisteria Place. While I spent much of that summer's afternoons at the YMCA, swimming or shooting pool and playing ping pong with my friends, each morning I got up with the birds and spent first light on one of the massive porches that stretched three sides of the house. I was an avid reader and spent many of those mornings in July and August of that summer alternating between reading and making noises for the mockingbirds to copy. One morning, I woke early and was on the porch overlooking Sixth Avenue and admiring the steamy, mysterious ground fog that had formed after an early morning rain. I heard a clip clop coming over the hill off in the distance. I thought, a horse? Downtown? That's kind of strange. I went to the far end of the porch and tried peering through the fog to catch a glimpse of the slow moving horse that obviously was headed my way. Maybe it was the watermelon man coming to town with his wagon, but if he was headed the wrong way. He usually came from the east and came up into town over south side. But I only heard one horse and no wagon. The watermelon man had two old mules he would hitch to a wagon that could be heard creaking and groaning and chains jingling from a long way away. But I heard only the clip clopping of the single horse and then a nicker and a blowing from the horse as if it was laboring up the small rise headed toward me. Then the voice of a man cut through the fog, deep and with a soft Mississippi patois that calmed the horse. "Moan now, Jake. Most home now." Now I was curious. Where was the horse headed and why? I wrapped my arm around one of the columns of Temple Heights and leaned off the porch, peering as hard as I could into the mist. I could make out the faint outline of a man leading a horse toward me on the street. The horse was a roan with a black mane. The man leading the horse was a black man with close cropped hair in a white chambray shirt that was faded. I could only see him from the middle of his chest up in the ground fog that hugged him and everything else in the sticky heat of that Mississippi morning. The man turned the horse up the driveway of Wisteria Place, which had a postage stamp of a yard and no stable or barn out back. As he turned up the drive, I saw another man in a Confederate uniform on an English saddle slumped over the horse's neck, as if asleep. His hands were laced in the horse's mane. The three stopped, and the man leading the horse walked to the slumped over man and gently put a wide hand on the man's back as if to wake him. He said, "We're home now." And then the two men and the horse evaporated before my eyes as the fog melted in the rising morning sun. Where did they go? Who were they? This would not be the last of the ghosts I would meet at Wisteria Place over the years. However, it was the one that has haunted me the longest in figuring out who they might have been. It led me to research Wisteria Place and those who have lived there. The house was originally built by William Cannon, a wealthy prairie planter, as his townhome so his children could attend school in Columbus. Shortly after moving to town, his Mayhew plantation home out on out in the prairie burned to the ground. Cannon built Wisteria Place on a half city block lot that he purchased from the Harris family, who at the time owned Temple Heights, the home I was spending my summer in. Vermont born Columbus architect James Lull was hired to design and build the home. It was finished in 1854 and was decorated with family portraits, china from Austria, silver from England, and imported Bohemian glass. Cannon would live in the home for a short time until his death in 1858. He is said to haunt the side yard of the house in his shirt sleeves and waistcoat as if he is in a hurry or has forgotten something. William Cannon is buried in Friendship Cemetery in the same family plot as his wife Eliza's second husband, Alexander Meek. Eliza and William Cannon's daughter, Mary Louise, married Samuel Meek Jr., a lawyer and statesman. Samuel had an older brother, Alexander Meek. Alexander Meek was an Alabama attorney who was a war hero of the Seminole Wars in Florida, a poet, editor of the Mobile Register, and Speaker of the House for the Alabama legislature. Alexander and Eliza married in September 1864, and he would move into Wisteria Place to live until his death in 1865 at age 51. Eliza would continue to live in the house until her death in 1901, and she is allegedly buried between her two husbands. However, she has no headstone, unlike the two gentlemen. So who were the men with the horses? Possibly Samuel Meek, the son-in-law, who apparently served in the Confederate Army as a captain of the 1st State Troop Infantry in 1864 and the 1st Battalion State Troops Infantry for 12 months prior in 1862 to 1863. He was said to have contracted malaria in the war, and legend has it that his manservant, an enslaved man who accompanied him to war, brought him home to be nursed back to health or die. Samuel Meek would live until 1901. However, he was said to be plagued by the fevers of the disease off and on for the rest of his life, and that would eventually weaken him so much that he would die. But your guess is as good as mine as to who is the man on the horseback being led by the African American man in the off-white shirt. Thank you for coming on my tour of Columbus, Mississippi, and the Tombigbee River area, and the Tombigbee Tales. Until next time.